Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Chris Kimball, who presides over, we now call it his food empire, Milk Street, has a brand new book called Simple. And I have the book sitting in front of me. I love the book. I love the recipes. It makes me want to cook. And for example, I was looking for pizza. I don't know why, but I was. And right there in the beginning, he had a pan pizza with tomatoes and mozzarella. Could not be easier, look more delicious, easy ingredients. And the book is filled with things like that. So I'm very happy to have Chris as my guest today. He's got so much going on. He's got an Emmy Award-winning TV show, public TV show. The James Beard won for the bi-monthly magazine. Podcasts, radio, cookbooks, you name it, he does it. And how did this happen to you? Was it Vermont that did it?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I don't know. I think it's because I continue, just like you. We both want to continue to be useful, right? So I don't know what else to do except to do what I'm doing, because I just love food and I love talking about food and writing about food. So, that's what else would I do when I get up in the morning,
I don't know. Eat breakfast probably, but not enough to keep you going. And where was your household a foodie household? I grew up in, food was a big deal. Every meal was important. What about you?
Well, it was the best of times, the worst of times. My mother was a terrible cook. She thought that she was into organic gardening, so she would bring in her carrots and this and the other thing, and she'd microwave them, or something. So it was pretty dreadful. But for a while, we actually had a cook because both my parents worked in New York, and she was actually amazing.
Good.
So, and then in Vermont, I spent, as you know, a lot of time on a small farm up there, and not my farm, somebody else's. And, I was taught how to bake by the local person, and the food was pot roast and baking powder biscuits and molasses cookies. But that's really what got me interested in food, was the importance of food in that small community.
Right. Yeah, no, and I also had a farm in rural Vermont. I think we've talked about it, Brookline.
Yeah.
Which was a little town. And again, food was so important. No matter who you are, whether you could cook or not, it was the center of so many local people's lives.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was, and the volunteer fire department has their chicken and biscuit dinners and everything else. But people don't sit around and talk about it. That's what's interesting, like you and I do. They eat it,
Yeah, they cook it and they eat it.
They cook it and they eat it, and it's really important. But they're talking about the weather, or they're talking about somebody's cow, or they're talking about, how much milk they're getting per day at the dairy. They're not talking about dinner last night. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that they just don't have it's just not part of the culture.
Right. And my town didn't even have a supermarket within range. It was some trip just to go to the market, but they had a little general store.
That's what we have.
Right. And everyone bought almost everything there. And maybe once a month they'd make that trek to a market, which was in a much bigger town. but we were all into it, and almost everyone I knew had gardens that were not decorative, but for to feed everyone.
Yeah, my house is actually right next to the general store, Sherman's, and that's the only store in town. It's 900 people, and people buy a lot of their stuff there. But occasionally people will go down to Bennington or some other town to Price Chopper, once a month.
Yeah, but big time.
Yeah, big time, but that's what they do on Friday night. But no, I would say a lot of my neighbors, 80% or more of what they eat, they catch, shoot, put up, freeze, can themselves. And you're right, the gardens are not decorative. They're there, for the potatoes and the tomatoes, and that's what they'll be eating all winter.
When we first moved there, what did we know? Nothing about, farming or field to table. And I remember when the deer I used to think was so adorable, and I would put salt licks out for the deer, to the absolute horror of my neighbors. Like, you're inviting them into your garden? And that's sort of what it was. Do you still live like that?
Not really. I mean, we're in Cambridge most of the time. I'm in Vermont part of the time. I have a little cabin on a mountain where I do go hunting in the fall. Like, I will be going up in a couple of weeks for a while to deer hunting. So, yeah, some of it. But I hang out with my friends like that. But, I live essentially in Boston most of the time, so I can't claim to be living a frugal life, because it's not frugal.
No, but
that's I'm never going to retire, but if I had a choice about it, that's how I would live. But we all don't get to do everything we want.
Right, but close enough. And where did Simple come from?
Well, I think what's really struck me in the last 7 or 8 years of doing Milk Street is that and we've talked about this, other cultures have a very different view of cooking. And just to boil it down to the core, it's that they combine flavors and ingredients in a different way than, let's say, Julia Child would, right? And so the cooking itself is not complicated. It's just the combinations of things. So if you have spices and fermented sauces like soy sauce or fish sauce, or you have chilies, you have all these other things, the cooking itself becomes much more simple. It's just what you're putting with what. And that's the key. And I think other cultures have a much more varied and expansive view of cooking than, let's say, we do with either English cooking or French cooking or whatever, was the basis of my training years ago. It's better or worse. It's just very different. But it's simpler. The concepts are simpler. It's not beef bourguignon,
Right.
Although that's not quite fair, because the French also do a lot of simple things too. But it's not a lot of heat and a lot of time and a lot of technique, which is, I think, French. It's more, okay, I'll put this spice, these cumin and cinnamon, and I'll put this with something else, and then we'll have something in 10 minutes, because the ingredients are doing most of the work for you.
I'm talking to Chris Kimball of Milk Street fame. His latest is called Simple, and it's got recipes to really get you through the week, and they make a big difference. Incredibly helpful. So at what stage, Chris, did you turn your passion for food into a living?
1979, when I started, when I was 28, I started working on Cook's magazine, and I went down to see Jim Beard, I remember, 12th Street, and he was helpful, and I met Julie and some other people, and I launched in the spring of 1980, knowing, I did cook a lot, but I was not as Julia liked to point out to me, I never got training in France. And I didn't know much about publishing. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just wanted a magazine about cooking, not eating. And that's how I got started. And then I just learned, by doing over a long period of time.
And now, are you cooking a lot? I know you travel all over.
I travel. I just got back from Romania, which was fascinating. Transylvania, actually. The Carpathian Mountains, and the food's fascinating. Well, what's interesting there is that there's a lot of small Saxon villages, which essentially means German, and there are about 250 of them. And they still have gardens. They still put up a lot of their food, and they still use horses more than tractors. And so the food is phenomenal. Like, they do a lot of soups, chorba they call them. But there's just great food there, and you spend time with these people, and it's just, again, it's a whole different way of thinking about cooking.
Yeah, I bet. So in your family, are most meals home cooked?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, during the week, everyone who works here at Milk Street in the kitchen, I'm tasting all day. We don't eat much dinner because I'm eating 20 things a day. So occasionally I'll cook during the week, but I do cook a lot on weekends. I mean, Saturday afternoon and Sunday are my cooking days, and I do spend a lot of time cooking then. But, we go through a lot of calories here from 9 in the morning to 5 at night. So there's a lot of cooking going on here, but when everybody gets home, I'd rather have an old-fashioned sometimes than dinner.
Right, and just relax a little bit. And
yeah, I still have 2 young kids at home, so that doesn't happen too much.
Do they like to eat?
To be honest with you, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Forget it.
And yeah, well, I'll tell you, Sunday I made homemade chicken soup. I just had some chicken and threw it together. And it was good. It was really good. And I gave some to my 4-year-old, and she saw the onion pieces floating in the broth, and she then distributed the entire bowl of soup all over the kitchen floor. So if that gives you some idea of the challenge, which I was not happy about.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, here we go.
New Phineas and Ferb is here.
We're back, baby.
For 104 more days
I know what we're gonna do today.
of summer vacation.
I am ready for summer shenanigans. Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
All right. We're gonna bust Phineas and Ferb once and for all.
Are we gonna do this again?
New inventions, shenanigans, innators, adventures, and songs.
Brand new summer vacation.
New Phineas and Ferb starts June 5th on Disney Channel and next day on Disney Plus on DisneyPlus.Disney.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
But it changes.
It does change. I have older kids as well, and one of them is actually a great baker. He used to run a little baking business, and so yeah, it does change.
Well, they take after their dad, and they like it. I have a 11-year-old granddaughter who was like, I'll only eat things that are white, went through that stage.
Yes.
And now she says, I want to be a restaurant critic. I said, well, then you have to vary the color of your diet.
Yes.
To get all those things. So that's making some impression. But it's a matter of just getting them to taste it, which They do. Now she's insulted if someone gives her a children's menu, in a restaurant.
Well, there you go. That's a step up. That's good.
Right? That's right. It's starting to happen where she's finding food as an adventure. And
yeah, I think as a parent, I have 6 kids. I've been doing it a long time. I used to be worried about getting them to do this and that and the other thing. At this point, I'm like, look,
forget it.
Look, if you want to eat the stuff, fine. If not, you can have some fruit or whatever. But I'm not going to force you to eat anything. And someday, hopefully, you'll ingest all of this, just by being around it. But maybe you won't. I don't know. Maybe it's just all in the DNA. Who knows?
Well, maybe. But I think a lot of it is if people, not you necessarily because you're in the world of food, but really sit down to a family dinner. Doesn't have to be complicated, can be anything.
No,
but
I agree.
Meal becomes very important.
Yeah.
And a form of communication. But if you're just going to, say to the kids, are you hungry, and throw something, on the kitchen counter, you may not have the same kind of luck in getting them to try things or making food pleasurable.
Or if they sit down to dinner and they start watching SpongeBob SquarePants.
Forget it, right.
I think is like sort of the end of civilization. I mean, it's not a bad show. I like the show, but I mean, not at dinner time, please.
I know. Yeah, we still want to have that. So do you find that through all your magazines and shows, that there is a return to interest in cooking?
Yeah. You and I remember the 80s. Remember when everyone was saying cooking was dead, and
right.
There weren't people sitting around the house because everybody had a job, and latchkey kids and this and the other thing. Well, it's come back with a vengeance. I mean, everybody's interested in cooking now compared to then. And, there are different subgroups of people and what they want to cook and how they want to cook. The kitchen has become a really interesting place in the last 10 or 15 years, right? A friend of mine said once she started, she used to work here, and she said, making the Mill Street recipes, she said her whole approach to the kitchen, she enjoys it. She has her friends there. It's more exciting. It's just she views the kitchen as a different room than she did before. And I think that's what's happening. The kitchen itself has become the room, as opposed to a living room or some other room. And so, yeah, I think it has. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Some people do it because they want to control where the food comes from. People do it for health reasons. People do it because they just love to cook, whatever. As long as you're in the kitchen, I don't care why.
Right, but it's also a form of reaching out, if you've got a family, to the family, and to really make it work. It doesn't have to be, the most complicated, as you say, simple. It can be as simple as can be. And also, when I was getting involved with food and the kitchen and everything else, we didn't think about putting everything on a baking sheet, and putting it in the oven, it's so easy and it looks so good. Do you do a lot of that, sheet cooking?
Yeah, tray bakes. Tray bakes are good. I like tray bakes. I use rice bowls a lot, or grain bowls, or noodle. I mean, I like a base of something, and then I can add something on top, or I can mix something in. And I find that is extremely useful. Like beans, rice, pasta, anything that grains in particular. You toast the grains a little bit first before you cook them with some oil, and I find that you can do 1,000 different things with, and then you can open the fridge and see what you've got. I mean, the greatest thing about cooking is once you get some, and Julia was able to do this, right? She had these formulas in her head. Once you get a basic concept down, then you can cook out of your fridge or out of your pantry, right? I mean, that's what you really want to end up being able to do, or what's good in the marketplace. Instead of having a shopping list and buying something specific, you can come back with what looked good and then make dinner out of that.
Right, and do that. So if you have time and it's not work involved, What do you like to eat the most?
I like things, I like dishes, whether it's a stir fry, a soup, a stew, whatever, that has a really interesting mix of flavors so that on the 10th bite, you're still going, gee, that's kind of interesting, right? So I like multi-layered foods, whether that's a combination of spices or it's got lemongrass in it or it's got, soy sauce or fish sauce in it. It's got something sweet, something sour. In Romania, as I said, they make these soups called ciorba, and they're slightly sour. They ferment millet and put a little bit of that liquid in. There's just a hint of it. And I find that so interesting because you have the meat or you have the vegetables, whatever it is. You have something maybe a little sweet, something a little caramelized, and then you have that little undercurrent of sour. And that's what I like. I like it when you have something unexpected and you go, yeah, that was great.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a special treat. And I've been making a lot of soups as meals. And I mean, the minute it gets cold, that's what I feel like doing. So I remember my mother never used to throw any leftovers out, and she would make something out of them. They never went into the garbage. They were always a soup, a pot pie, a casserole or something. And I've been saving all that stuff, and I'll make a big soup and let it cook forever. And everyone seems to love it. So,
well, in Vermont, there was a neighbor who died many years ago, but she moved up in the 60s, I think. They came from New York. They were hippies. And, they lived in a really rough, primitive house. But she used to make compost soup. So she'd take every day everything that was left over and throw it in the pot. And this went on and on and on and on for weeks. So it was like she might have something in there from 2 weeks ago. So that was her famous recipe, compost soup. So sometimes
funny.
It was good and sometimes it wasn't that good.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was Vermont. My neighbor was in love with Morgan horses. So what she brought into her house, and we didn't invite her to ours because we weren't as good-natured as she was, she would bring the Morgan horses in the house, into the living room, into the kitchen, and she would just, put a lead on them and bring them in, and very happy to have their company. And, to each his own. But the Vermont years, we all loved. We still talk about them and reminisce about how lovely it was, and all the neighbors and the animals, and it was just a different time. And everyone did cook because it was so far for us to go to the real market, if you needed a lot of stuff. So
the thing about Vermont and other small towns around the country that is nice is they seem, in a nice way, to be a little cut off from all of the social media and all the news and all the things that I think are just overwhelming to all of us, right? And they're still focused on what people used to be focused on, which we've talked about, family, community, et cetera. It's not perfect. I mean, there are bad people in every place and their concerns and other things, but I think it is a simpler life, as corny as that sounds. But I think it's easier to manage that kind of life in many ways. I find it really appealing.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's best warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
This episode is brought to you by PetSmart. Stop by for Yappy Hour with your pet at PetSmart. Save $5 on walk-in grooming services like nail trims, ear cleaning, brushing, and more. No appointment needed every weekday from 2 to 6 p.m. And while you're there, Yappy Hour includes exclusive in-store deals, like 25% off pet toys. Visit services.petsmart.com/grooming to learn more.
No, without question, my neighbor, Uncle George Ware, who was actually born in my house, which was an old brick farmhouse, one of the few brick houses in southern Vermont, going back so many years. But Uncle George insisted on teaching me how to make things grow. You know, if you can grow it, you'll never be hungry. And I ended up with a 2-acre vegetable garden, and when who could possibly do that? We weren't that huge a family. I would literally take it to Mountain Mowing Higgins Farm and sell it. And I was so proud of myself that I'm like a farmer. It was a thrill.
Well, my mother used to have a large garden. She gardened all her life, and she had big gardens. But they were, I always call them the Darwin gardens because they were survival of the fittest. Yeah. So she planned everything in May and June, and she would never hoe it or tend to it. She just let it go. And she plants so much of it, like she plant like 50 tomato plants.
Wow.
Well, 10 or 15 of them would sort of survive on their own. And so when harvest time came, she would just pick whatever made it. But that was her, you know, she didn't like going out every night and weeding. So
yeah, that I didn't either. But it's you have to do it to a certain extent.
You got to do it. Yeah,
I know. But you still have your garden, right?
No, I haven't had a garden in a while because I'm not up there enough. You know, I'm not there every weekend. I'm there like every other weekend. But next summer, I can't stand it. I need to start a garden again. So I do grow a lot of food for the deer. I do food plots, but I'm planting turnips and rye and, you know, that kind of forage. But I am going to do a garden behind my house next summer, and you know, just a few basics. But the things I miss the most are, you know, I haven't had a good tomato. I travel a lot, and everyone says they have good tomatoes, but
it's not.
I haven't had a good tomato in 20 years, so I need to start growing tomatoes again.
And on your travels, do you see any trends, or you see something that is becoming a way of life? You travel everywhere, not only in America.
Yes, I do. Some places, like I was in Umbria in Italy this summer. You know, Italy's a place where in Rome, if you say, where can you get good Thai food, they kind of look at you funny. They do their food. But if you look at other places like Paris, they're definitely going back and redoing bistro food. That's cool. Romania, because they ended communism in the late 80s, where it was very hard to get ingredients. They're now definitely going back and rethinking and redoing their history through their food. So I see food being a way of cultural reconnecting in a world where people, I think, want to go backwards a little bit, not forwards. So I see that almost everywhere I go. They're going back to their bistro food. They're going back to their old soups. They're going back to their old, you know, the fried dough, whatever it is. They want to go back to their roots, and their roots really are connected through food.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference too. It's also a very good way of meeting people if you're a good traveler, you know, and we'll take a chance.
Well, you know, I've never met somebody in all my travels who wasn't happy to have me sit down at their table, to share their food, share their recipes, share their stories. And most of the time I don't even speak, you know, I don't speak Romanian. But, you know, you manage, as cooks, you manage to get by, even if there's not someone there to translate. You manage to get by, and it really cuts right through. because you end up helping them roll out the dough or whatever it is, and then you just sit down and have lunch.
I know, it's a commonality that makes a very big difference. Well, Absolutely. I enjoyed Chris Kimball. Simple. I sort of did the unforgivable, folded down pages.
Oh, that's right.
So it's okay. It's a cookbook, and it's a gorgeous cookbook with a lot of wonderful recipes.
Thank you.
You too, and we'll talk soon.
All right, take care.
Bye, Chris. Christopher Kimball. Simple, Milk Street's latest book with wonderful recipes. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC Radio. Stay tuned because there's lots more ahead.